posture, I'd also like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of this land. I'm going to be brief. I'd like to put our current agonies in context by asking what the value of dissent might be in the university. Because some people have expressed disbelief that freedom of speech could be invoked to defend the students' protest against Richard Kemp. They've denounced what they call our perversion of that concept. Our critics, including the Vice-Chancellor, have made it entirely clear what forms of dissent they're prepared to tolerate. Only speak when it's your turn, don't raise your voice, always be tolerant of others. Unless, of course, you're the Vice-Chancellor himself, when you get to threaten people with the sack if you find their views hard to tolerate. Protest, interruption and dissent are what democracy looks like. That's not an empty slogan, it's the fact of the matter. We can't allow academic decorum to paralyse us so rigidly that we're prevented from turning our heads and looking in the face of the lessons of history. It's the young activist with her megaphone, not the intellectual in their seminar room, who leads the struggle for a better world. Students routinely interrupt speakers on university campuses. In threatening them with disciplinary action, the leaders of this university obediently do their bit to legitimise and reinforce one of the most dangerous features of modern society, the criminalisation of dissent. This is the opposite. This is the opposite of the civic purpose that a university should fulfil. Today, we're being told what an intolerant, disrespectful, uncivil thing it was to interrupt Richard Kemp. That's Richard Kemp, who brags of the humanity of the army that littered Gaza with over 2,000 Palestinian corpses less than a year ago. I wonder what they'll tell us tomorrow or the day after. Perhaps that it's disrespectful to hold a political meeting. They've already banned a meeting on Anzac Day and militarism. Or perhaps they'll tell us that it disturbs people to hand them a political leaflet on their way into university. Or maybe they'll tell us that we can't be too critical of politicians at conferences or in our tweets. Is this irresponsible hyperbole? It's a matter of public record that these kinds of censorship are happening already at our university. Our current Chancellor is from QBE Insurance. Who's to say that our next one won't be from SBS? Yesterday, the Vice-Chancellor posted an article on Yammer by Human Rights Commissioner Tim Wilson, in which Wilson defended the sacking of Scott McIntyre for expressing his political views. Michael Spence said that that article was interesting. So, who here is really on the side of free speech? Those of us defending protest and dissent, or those of us demanding the scalps of staff for their political views and supporting dragging them and students through an inquisitorial legal investigation? Free speech can't be invoked to quarantine power from its critics and to doubly silence the voiceless. Disruption is what protest is for. Another name of it is speaking truth to power. Suppressing it in the name of civility is to substitute etiquette for the real battle of ideas. And what about Jake in all of this? What about Jake? Education should be directed to the liberation of human capacities. Academics aren't just obliged to conduct free inquiry and disseminate its results. We also, I think, have a duty to maximise the opportunities for others to do the same. And in advocating justice for Palestine, Jake's intention has been to do exactly that. Now he's facing a sack for his principled expression of a conscientious and non-violent educational politics. A more serious affront to the university's purpose couldn't be envisaged. Teaching and research are already heavily shackled by inequalities of class, gender and race, as Palestinian academics and students know only too well. They mustn't also be subject to the politically motivated interference of university administrations. Now, it's not a coincidence that this attack is being made against a BDS exponent. It's precisely the controversial views which the principles of intellectual and political freedom are needed to protect. What's being done to Jake is an attack on every student and academic here, whatever their views on Palestine and whatever their views on BDS. It's wrong, it's cowardly, it's corrupt, it must not be tolerated. Defending Jake and the protesters is incumbent on everyone who thinks dissent matters. Universities, as a number of people here have already said, should be places where people stand up to power, not where they're docile and compliant before it. Otherwise, we're consenting to the servile debasing of education for political gratification, and we're professing the creation and reproduction not of knowledge but of propaganda. Thanks.